well, as well as the players, there's another group of people who are equally important, and that's the fans.
Absolutely.
Shaun, how, during this period, and whilst these decisions are being taken, how do we take care of the fans? How are fans represented? How are their concerns addressed? And how are they made to be part of this, we keep saying it, unprecedented process?
I mean, this is difficult. Each club is going to look at how does it engage with its own fan base. I mean, what can you know? Everybody's clamouring for this information. We've talked about periods of time to reflect and cool heads, and that's what we're doing at the moment. That's all driven by this clamour for when are we going to be able to go back and watch our team play again? Because that's what people want to see. So clubs are going to have to work out how do you continue to engage and keep that fan base engaged. Remembering that you can't get them all together for a big meeting.
No.
You know, you can't do all the things that you would do normal season. You know, Mark doing a fans forum with 400 fans wanting to know what the future. We can't do that anymore. So ultimately,
do it by social media and that, don't you?
Well, it's going to have to be done that way, and that of course will only then get to a certain demographic of fan base. You know, there'll be other fan base that just don't go anywhere near social media. So it's a real challenge. And actually, you know, the Sky and keeping these debates going and keeping the interest in football actually helps bridge that gap during this period of time. We have to keep people engaged in something that's not actually there and happening.
Good for you, Jeff. You're still in work.
Well, I mean, joking aside, football has the place in the hearts and minds of millions, tens of millions of people, and it's important that we address those concerns and how they feel that they are still very, very much a voice that must be listened to during this process. And I can't think of the right way other than that they're not getting their fix. Because football, normally it provides relief as well as anguish and pain, depending on the results. It provides a great source of joy. It's a social event as well. That has been taken away from millions of people's lives right now. So how do we help them?
And
how?
Of course, the irony in all this is that this summer's European Championship was meant to be a summer of travel. It was meant to be a tournament of travel for supporters to be able to see different cultures, different environments around the sporting community. The interesting point there, Jeff, is that if you look at all the calls that UEFA executives have tomorrow, it's all with the administrators, it's all with the clubs, it's all with the leagues. And I guess the question to Shaun is, when you were on the board of the European leagues, representing 30+ leagues in European football, how much were the fans front and centre of that? Have you been really honest? Or are you just looking at it from a league perspective and the fans, well, the leagues can deal with them?
Well, I mean, the leagues ultimately, you know, manage the competition on behalf of the clubs. You know, leagues don't have fans. It's the clubs that have the fans, and that's where this link sometimes is misunderstood. Because if a league stands in the middle of the relationship between a club and its fans, then that potentially creates unrest in its own right, and that's in normal circumstances.
But there is a relationship, because there were suggestions in some quarters of games being played behind closed doors. So then the league would have had a direct relationship with the fans.
Absolutely, and obviously in those conversations were going about how could you stream games so fans could still see them. But what was the purpose of, you know, playing games behind closed doors was usually a punishment for clubs. Rather than another measure, and ultimately the commercial value for clubs is by having fans inside that ground. So playing games could only have ever been behind closed doors a way of getting to the end of the season. Yeah. So if we'd have been 3 games away from the end of the season, then that conversation would probably have had more meaning. Being 10 games away in some respects, or 12 games away, you just can't do that.
Sean, the argument there is, if it was only 3 games from the end of the season, not everything would have been settled. So it's arguably those games had even more importance that the fans wanted to see.
But there wasn't as many, and it didn't go on as long.
That's irrelevant. What if it was a game that saw you win the title? It was the game that saw you save from relegation.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't think of anything worse than going and watching your team all year and not being able to see the one game that really, really matters. But they were the sort of decisions that people were having to make inside that sphere when everything was spinning at once and we were trying to find the right answer. Now we've got to the position where we're not playing, that should never ever be considered again.
I was going to say, is everyone's gut feel that that's a non-starter now? It was mooted at some point, but is that just not going to happen, do you think?
In my mind, it makes no sense at all. None whatsoever. Goes against everything we've spoken about, completely.
No chance of behind closed doors.
I don't see you have fans congregate outside. They mentioned earlier about the PSG game, so thousands of fans congregate. You defeat the object. You need the services there, the police, and everything is defeated by this. I understand fully. It's the fans coming through the gate, spending the money, which keeps the clubs going. None of it's happening. Why are we doing it?
Yeah, no. I only played behind closed doors once for Leicester against Burton Albion because of crowd trouble in the first game. It was the FA Cup. Neil Warnock's Burton Albion. We played at Highfield Road, Coventry's old ground, and it was just like playing for the reserves. It was just spooky. Yeah.
Speaking to those in the game, they all say the same thing. It would be a tick box exercise. The only reason it would be done would be to tick the box that says we've fulfilled the fixtures.
But as you haven't, Brian, have you? As Jeff said, you got Liverpool, for example. Fans want to be there. We were there the night we won the title after 30 years. All of these various examples, we have to make sure it's for the good of the game.
And when we talk about precedents of playing behind closed doors, I remember a decision we did take when I was at the league was when Bolton couldn't fulfil the last fixture against Brentford. One of the options was you could have played it behind closed doors just to tick that box, and we said no, that's not what this is. That's not what this is about. So we actually made that positive decision. So it was a case of playing behind closed doors just gets you to the end of a process.